Hi, I'm Diego and welcome to Just Off. Another thing about me is that I like cooking a lot. And I happen to have a friend of mine who's into cooking just as much as I am. But while I like cooking with proper tools like sharp knives and solid cutting boards, my friend, on the other hand, cannot put together one decent tool for the life of her, and since her graduation is coming up, I made it my burden to fix this. I know that she always liked those end grain cutting board with a chessboard pattern, and after rummaging through my wood stash, I found these two. This is ash, a very white, very hard wood, although it's not actually ideal to make a cutting board. And this is Sirocco, a very dark, very hard wood that's also not ideal to make a cutting board. Now, a keen viewer might be thinking,
if you know that they're not ideal, why don't you make it out of walnut and maple like every sane person does?
well, because I obviously don't have walnut and maple, and I also don't want to spend 400 euros just buying these two gigantic wood slabs just to make one single end grain cutting board. Also, keep in mind that the fact that these two woods are not ideal doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad, it just means that they're better type of woods to do this with, but this is what I have, and this will have to do. But enough yapping, let's actually get to work, and we're gonna do that by making cubes. Sort of. You think I overdid it with the clamps? So apparently someone drove some nails inside the ash plank and left those holes all over the place, but lucky me, this is an end grain cutting board, so no one has to know. And just like that, we got cubes. Now, I made every single one of these exactly 3 centimeters thick, because I just eyeballed it, really, and it seemed like a good height for a... You eyeballed it? This was you literally 5 minutes ago.
Sopra 217, noi abbiamo detto che vogliamo fare come spessore, programma. Ok, per 217 togli 1 centimetro, per 217 togli 1 centimetro per estremità.
Okay, fine. Whenever I do projects, I plan like a maniac. But there's a good reason for that. I do it because I am absolutely the most untrustworthy person that I know when it comes to eyeball a project. Like, whenever I have to trust my gut on something, it's 100% sure that I'm gonna fuck it up. But guess what? I still fucked up. According to project, I was supposed to end up with 144 cubes, and despite me doing the math 4 freaking times, I'm still 22 cubes short. Now, in all of this, there's a good news and there's a bad news. The good news is that since I know that I usually fuck up, when I plan redundantly. And that basically means that I know that something will probably go wrong at some point down the line, so I plan to make more pieces than the ones that I'm gonna actually need. But the bad news is that despite this redundancy, I'm still 4 cubes short when it comes to the darker ones. So please, allow me to introduce you to these fuckers. These are exactly the 4 cubes that I need to complete this cutting board, but I made a mistake in the cutting process and every single one of these, it's now unusable. But don't worry, we are gonna fix them. For the first one, it's fairly simple. The problem with this piece is that I simply cut it too short. If you put it close to another piece, you can see that it's just a couple of millimeters less thick, and the solution is fairly easy too. You take a scrap piece, and you put it together. You just need to make sure that the wood grains is oriented correctly, and then you glue it, you clamp it, you cut it to size, and you're done. Sure, there is gonna be a little horizontal line that none of the other pieces have, but once you put it in the middle of the cutting board, no one is gonna know. With these three, the thing it's a little bit trickier. If you look closely on the surface, you can see that all three are nicked in a very similar way. This happened because when I was doing the cut and I was pulling up with the blade, the friction between the blade and this piece was so high that caused this piece to lift and to basically smash against a super fast rotating blade that obviously left a mark. And with these three, I'm gonna have to get a little more creative, but I'm not gonna show you just yet because now it's assembly time. So obviously that didn't work. And the reason is because I think that when you have that much individual pieces, the chances of the structure starting to bend and twist are really high. And I noticed that some part of the cutting board started to look really uneven, really twisted. So I had to disassemble everything to prevent the cubes from sticking in a wrong way. So let's try a different approach. Try moving now, shithead. And now I just gotta do that 14 more times. So obviously they didn't come out perfect, but at this point I think that we left the perfect train a long time ago, so let's just make them good enough. Knowing what happened last time, this time I put a lid on it to prevent it from bending and twisting, and it looks like it worked, but let's unclamp it and see if we actually did it. Okay, it's definitely far from being perfect, but it's glued and it's straight. And that's what really matters right now, so let's try fixing up those imperfections and see what we're working with. And we got a cutting board. As you can obviously see from the thickness, I did more than just belt sanding. I actually had to straight up planing it to cover additional mistakes that I made in the process that I'm not gonna show you, otherwise this video is at risk of becoming a fail compilation, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that we are done, sort of. I just need to do some final touch-ups send it, apply some finish, and then hopefully deliver it, considering that I'm already 2 weeks late for this project. And when I say final touch-ups, I mean that something went wrong in the gluing process and I was left with these tiny little gaps all along the cutting board. And gaps like these are a big no-no when it comes to cutting boards, because if you leave it open like that, food will go in there, it will go bad, and it'll be a perfect place for bacteria and mold to grow. Things that you definitely do not want on a surface where you're cutting your food. And to close those gaps, you're gonna need a very fine sand of the wood that you're using. You're gonna mix it with glue to create a paste, and then you're gonna stuff those gaps using a spatula, making sure that the glue sinks deep into the wood. And now we let it dry and we can finally start sanding. After almost a month of consecutive mistakes, I finally did it. Now, normally this would be the time where I tell you about how much fun I had making this cutting board and how I'm happy with the results. Too bad that both of these statements are completely false. Making this cutting board, I've had the worst time possible thanks to the outrageous amount of mistakes that I made. Like, I know that in the beginning of the video I told you about how I usually fuck up a lot, but this time the amount of mistakes were off the charts. And as far as looks goes, I know that it looks decent, but it's full of imperfections. And when I make things, I usually aim for perfect, so I can say that I'm not 100% happy about that either. Obviously, none of the imperfection impact functionality, so it's still 100% functional as a cutting board, plus it's a present, so I know that it's gonna be good enough, but I can say that I'm not 100% happy on how it turned out. If we want to look at a silver lining though, I think that all of these projects where you fuck up quite a lot can actually be super helpful to improve your skills. Actually, it doesn't necessarily apply to craftsmanship only, but to life in general. Because if you realize that something went terribly wrong down the line and you take a second to stop and to look back at the mistakes that you made and understand why those mistakes happen and understand how can you prevent those mistakes from happening again in the future, I think that right there you have a great opportunity to improve, not necessarily in your craft, but in whatever field you're in life. Anyway, I think that this is it. Of course, thanks for watching, and I think it's delivery time.